The jungle on Ganaira 7 was not silent. It breathed. It pulsed with the distant thrum of alien insects, the chirps of translucent predators, and the rustle of leaves in air too thick with humidity to allow a whisper to travel far. But silence had never been the concern for Valkyrie Group. They moved as ghosts, not caring if the jungle noticed. Captain Elias Reyes knelt beneath the wide fronds of a sky leaf, rifle slung low across his chest, the dull matte of his armor blending seamlessly with the bioluminescent moss underfoot. He tapped twice on the side of his helmet. No words, no chatter, just signals. Behind him, 6 other figures adjusted without hesitation, shifting formation as though they were extensions of a single mind. To the untrained eye, Valkyrie Group looked like a peacekeeping team on routine patrol. But nothing about Reyes' posture said peace. He was watching, measuring, and behind his visor, his eyes were locked on the Draskari patrol stomping through the underbrush ahead. 5 targets, came Staff Sergeant Yun's voice, low and even through Reyes' comms. Tight wedge. No overwatch. They're not expecting a fight, Reyes muttered. Why would they? Yun replied. We haven't been allowed to throw a punch in weeks. Doesn't mean they're not daring us to. Reyes clenched his jaw. The Draskari patrols had been growing bolder. They spat in the dirt when Valkyrie passed, fired warning shots close enough to peel paint off helmets. And every time, Valkyrie stood down. Not out of fear. Orders. Rules of engagement. Do not initiate hostilities. Observe. Report. Deter if possible. It was the if possible that made Reyes want to spit. Deterrence only worked if your enemy believed there were consequences. But the Draskari had never seen what humans were like without rules. And Reyes had been forced to smile while they laughed in his face. He gave the signal. Valkyrie slipped backward into the foliage, vanishing as cleanly as breath in winter air. Back at the forward operating base, nothing more than reinforced canvas and mobile walls nestled among the trees. Reyes tore off his helmet and ran a hand through sweat-soaked hair. The tang of jungle rot clung to everything. Corporal Juno Vega handed him a flask of filtered water, expression unreadable behind a painted-on smirk. No one dead, she said. Another successful day in paradise. Funny, I thought paradise didn't stink of mold and threats of war crimes. Guess we booked the wrong travel package. They shared a dry chuckle. The kind soldiers learn when real humor is too dangerous. Sergeant Yin strode in, eyes hard. Satellite feed from Colony Delta just came through. Reyes didn't like the look in her eyes. He turned to the screen on the wall, already glowing with green filtered static. Vegas stepped closer. The footage stabilized. Then the screaming began. It wasn't a clean ambush. It was a slaughter. Civilians, unarmed, huddled in shelters that offered no protection. The Draskari walked through like harvesters in a wheat field, slicing through flesh and steel. Reyes saw children. He saw a woman cradling an infant shot point blank. Then fire, liquid, white-hot, not even meant to kill, but to make statement. The video ended with a Draskari officer turning to the feed's recording drone and speaking in broken standard. This is our kindness. Do not test our cruelty. Vega's face was pale. He was already moving, checking weapons, loading mags. No one spoke. No one needed to. Then came the tone. A soft beep from Reyes' wristpad. Secure channel. Priority Alpha. He accessed it. Text only. No voice. One line. Engagement restrictions lifted. You are now unleashed. Reyes read it twice. His hand closed slowly around the screen until his knuckles blanched. Well, Vegas said, eyes locked on his. Are we finally allowed to stop pretending? Reyes said nothing at first. He stood in the center of the tent, feeling the pulse in his neck sink with a slow, deep fury that he had kept buried for too long. The restraints were off. The chain had been cut. The leash burned. "No more rules," he said. "We move at dusk." There were no cheers. No fist pumps. No exclamations of revenge. Valkyrie Group didn't celebrate authorization. They accepted it. Like old wolves who had been told to stop growling, finally given permission to bite. Hours later, twilight descended on Ganaira, 7 like ink spilling across the sky. The jungle turned darker than pitch, illuminated only by intermittent glows from native fungi and the vague outline of the stars above the canopy. Reyes stood over a weapons crate, sliding a long, curved blade into his thigh sheath. Each member of the team wore their face paint differently tonight. The clean camouflage had been replaced with crude streaks of black and red. Old habits, old rituals. "This isn't retaliation," Yin said softly as she checked her rifle's chamber. "This is retribution." "Not for them," Reyes replied. "The next ones. The ones thinking of trying the same." They moved. No words. A whisperless glide through the thick underbrush, sensors disabled, electronic signatures dead silent. They wore the jungle like a second skin. No tech glow. No footsteps. No mercy. Ahead, the Draskari outpost loomed. Sloppily fortified. Overconfident. Just 5 soldiers laughing around a fire pit as their thermal sensors blinked lazily across a clear field. One leaned back against a crate, chewing something that crackled like beetle shells. They never saw Reyes come up behind him. The knife slid between the vertebrae with a sickening wet crunch. No scream, just a gasp, and a body slumping to the dirt. Simultaneously, Vega's suppressed rifle whispered twice. 2 more Draskari collapsed without even dropping their weapons. Yin struck fast, brutal, blade across the throat of a 4th. The 5th turned, wide-eyed, mouth opening in a guttural bark. Reyes hit him like a hammer, blade in one hand, elbow in the other. The alien hit the ground, winded, ribs shattered. Reyes knelt. "You wanted to see what happens when we stop being nice," he whispered. Then he drove the blade through the creature's mouth and left it there. As Reyes stood, blood dripping onto the moss, he looked up at the rest of his team. Their faces were unreadable, but he saw the glint of something deeper behind their eyes. Not satisfaction, not vengeance. Clarity. No more warnings. No more rules. This wasn't humanity on a leash. This was humanity unleashed. And now, the galaxy would remember why it had once feared what humans could become. Reyes gave a nod, and Valkyrie faded back into the jungle, shadows wrapped in blood and silence. Their message had been sent. The war hadn't just started. It had evolved. The Draskari response was immediate and arrogant. Within hours of Valkyrie's silent slaughter, reconnaissance drones detected troop movements on the outer rim of Sector 12. Drop pods descended in streaks of blue fire, belching out armored infantry, and biotechnical recon beasts bred to sniff out heat signatures and chemical traces. Ganaira 7's humid skies screamed with the sudden influx of noise and pressure. But Reyes wasn't interested in noise. He was interested in what the enemy did when it thought it was the predator. 17-foot mobiles, 2 exostriders, and 1 command relay station. Yin reported, her voice hushed but steady through encrypted comms. No air cover. They think we're stuck to the ground. They're not hunting, Vegas said, crouched next to Reyes in the canopy shadows. They're parading. Try to scare us back into our cage. Reyes watched through magnified optics. The Draskari squad moved in a deliberate V formation, heads high, rifles loose in their hands. One of them, larger, its armor accented with bone plates, stood atop a hover sled, barking orders to subordinates while gesturing toward a nearby ridgeline. Reyes narrowed his eyes. "We hit the comms first," he said. Cut their ears. EMP. Yin offered. No. Too loud. Too final. I want them deaf, not blind. He tapped his wrist pad. The response from Central was instantaneous. Satellite override codes were accepted. A localized jamming field bloomed over the Draskari position, silent and invisible. Reyes watched as their command relay blinked out. Confusion spread like a virus. Orders stopped flowing. The hover sled dipped, its onboard systems flickering. Then came the real fear. Isolation. Valkyrie had never been about superior numbers. They didn't wage war like the Draskari. Overwhelming firepower, burning cities to send a message. No, Valkyrie operated like scalpels. You didn't see the cut until the bleeding started. Go quiet, Reyes ordered. They moved. Through thick undergrowth and bio-warped roots, they descended on the Draskari squad like vapor. Yin placed a charge beneath the lead strider's leg, its explosive matrix tuned to fracture without detonation. Vega slipped through mist and moss to slither up the ridge, establishing a sniper nest. The first death was theatrical. A single Draskari soldier vanished from the rear flank. No scream, no thrash. 1 second there, the next gone, dragged silently into the foliage. When his squad mates turned, rifles ready, they found only a smear of blood and a fingerless gauntlet. Then the strider's leg crumpled with a shriek of metal. The machine listed, spasmed, and fell onto a trio of foot mobiles, crushing them before they could even fire a shot. Panic bloomed. Reyes moved in close, low to the earth. One Draskari broke from the pack, rifle trembling, its 4 eyes scanning in all directions. Reyes let him pass, then lunged, knife under the arm, up through the soft gap in the armor. Blood sprayed silently. He caught the corpse, laid it down gently, and was gone again before the next soldier turned. Above, Vega's suppressed rifle whispered once. The hover sled driver tumbled backward, brains leaking onto the console. Yin dropped from a tree and swept 2 soldiers with a burst from her carbine. Tight, controlled, surgical. They didn't just kill. They dismantled. Within 5 minutes, only 1 Draskari remained. He stood surrounded by bodies, his rifle out of ammo, his breathing ragged and animalistic. Reyes stepped into view, calm, measured. "Do you understand now?" he asked, voice flat. The Draskari screamed and charged. Reyes waited until the last second, then sidestepped and brought the butt of his rifle crashing into the alien's jaw. The Draskari crumpled to his knees, gurgling. Reyes crouched beside him. "This is what happens," he said softly, "when you make the mistake of thinking we are afraid of war." He stood and drove his blade through the creature's throat, clean and final. Valkyrie regrouped at the extraction point, silent, blood-streaked, uninjured. Yin exhaled. 17 dead. Vega glanced at the bodies. "They'll think it was just tactics. Superiority of training. They always do," Reyes replied, "until they see the pattern." And they would, because Valkyrie wasn't finished. The next 2 days unfolded like a myth. A supply convoy, unguarded save for a trio of drone escorts, vanished without trace. Only the scorched imprint of boots and scavenged ammo crates left behind. A forward firebase went dark in the dead of night. Surveillance footage later recovered showed one of the human soldiers walking straight through the front gate, wearing the uniform of a captured Draskari. Not a shot was fired until the explosion ripped the command tower in half. The Draskari High Command responded with threats and propaganda. Primitive humans acting on barbaric instincts. Savage retaliation unbecoming of a species claiming civilization. But the soldiers on the ground? They weren't listening to the broadcasts anymore. They were listening to the whispers. They move like phantoms. They don't sleep. They don't eat. They write names of our dead in our own blood. They make it personal. Fear began to corrode, the Draskari ranks. Their captains ordered tighter patrols, heavier escorts. Civilians were moved inland, deeper into hardened facilities. But it didn't matter. Valkyrie adjusted. They flowed like water, always a step ahead, always watching. At night, Reyes sat by a dying fire and read from the growing pile of intercepted comms logs. Yin approached quietly. We got a ping from orbital recon. Draskari forward base. Heavily defended, multiple armor units. But it's not what they're guarding that's interesting. Reyes looked up. What is it? A cage, she said, with 6 humans inside. Civilians. Reyes' expression didn't change, but the tension in his jaw told Vega everything. Bait? She asked. Of course, Yin said. But it doesn't matter. Reyes stood slowly. Mark the coordinates. We go at first dark. No extraction window, Yin warned. No fallback route. Doesn't matter. She studied him. You're really going to walk into a fortified position for 6 civilians? Reyes stared into the fire. I'm going to walk in there to remind them of something. That when you go to war with humans, there are rules you hope we follow. Because if we stop playing nice, they don't stand a chance, Vega finished quietly. Reyes nodded once. Far above the canopy, orbital satellites tracked Valkyrie's movement and fed the information to command. But there were no updates, no strategy notes, just 2 lines in Reyes' personnel file, now marked active engagement. Be advised, Valkyrie Group no longer operating under standard constraints. If contact lost, assume the enemy is bleeding. And beneath it, Reyes' own words scrawled during his last field report. They thought our restraint was weakness. Now, they'll meet the version of us we've kept buried. The jungle was no longer a battlefield. It was a crucible, and humanity was forging something in blood and fire the galaxy had no name for yet. The Draskari stronghold rose from the jungle like a rusted monolith, its obsidian plating streaked with condensation and blood, some of it still fresh. Reyes lay prone in the mud a kilometer out, studying its defenses. Towers manned by twitchy gunners, auto turrets sweeping with lethal precision, and a pair of bipedal tanks parked near the main gate. But it was the cage near the southern platform that drew his attention. 6 civilians. Dirty. Starving. Still breathing. It was a message. Not just bait. They weren't restrained or gagged. They were put on display, lit by flickering searchlights, just visible enough to be recognized as human. A warning to others. A trophy to their captors. And for Reyes, a fuse. Yun's voice came through the comms, low and precise. Spotted sniper nests in the tree-lean, northeast and west quadrants. Intermittent patrols. 2-minute gaps between sweeps. Vega, Reyes whispered. Setting charges under the secondary fuel line, she replied. Give me 6 minutes, and I can put the tanks to sleep. Reyes nodded, even though they couldn't see him. We go full silent until detonation. No missed shots. No heroics. He let the silence settle before continuing. If any of us get captured, you know what to do. No one responded. They didn't need to. Valkyrie had made peace with those terms long ago. At 0200, the jungle erupted. Not with fire. Not yet. But with sudden, coordinated motion. Yun breached the perimeter from the north, disabling the nearest turret with a magnetic spike before scaling the outer wall like a shadow. She was inside before the first guard even realized the system had gone dark. Vega's charges detonated 30 seconds later. The tanks didn't explode. They simply collapsed like drunks kicked in the spine. Sparks danced across the stone yard as panicked engineers scrambled to reboot systems that were already fried beyond repair. The opening was brief. Reyes seized it. He ran low, beneath the whine of plasma bolts overhead, weaving between outcroppings of alien stone. 2 Draskari spotted him too late. He was already airborne when they raised their rifles. One died from a bullet to the throat, the other from an impact of Reyes' boot shattering his mandible. Reyes reached the cage. The civilians stared at him like ghosts had walked into their world. A man in torn work fatigues reached through the bars, grasping at his shoulder. "Please," he rasped. "My son, he's burning up. Infection." Reyes didn't hesitate. He slipped a breaching charge from his belt and pressed it to the lock. "Cover your ears," he said. It detonated with a muffled pop and a burst of steam. The door clanged open. Behind them, alarms screamed to life. The base woke with fury. Draskari poured from barracks and bunkers, howling in their guttural language, rifles drawn. Vega's second charge lit the sky from the east, sending debris into the air and driving half the response team in the wrong direction. "Extraction window is closing," Yun warned through the comms. "Stick to the plan," Reyes snapped. "Get them out." He herded the civilians toward the breach, firing controlled bursts to keep Draskari heads down. One of the aliens leapt from the roof, claws bared, but Reyes met it mid-air, burying his combat knife into its throat before its feet touched earth. Vega joined them at the southern breach, blood splattered across her jaw. "All charges set," she said. "Good," Reyes panted. "Then it's time to erase this place." Yin appeared from the shadows, her rifle smoking. "Perimeter compromised. We've got maybe 3 minutes before they regroup." Reyes handed her the youngest civilian, a boy no older than 9. Fevered limp. "Run," he ordered. She didn't argue. They moved like a single entity, Valkyrie clearing the path, the civilians stumbling behind. When they reached the extraction ridge, the drop shuttle was already descending, heat flaring from its underbelly. Then came the roar. Not from behind, from above. A Draskari warbird, sleek and predatory, swooped low. Its side cannons opened fire, vaporizing trees and carving a trench in the jungle floor. "Down!" Reyes shouted, shielding the boy with his body. Yin returned fire, but her rounds pinged harmlessly off the warbird's shields. "It's targeting the evac," Vega shouted, scanning for anything they could use. Reyes turned to the civilians. "Keep moving. Straight to the shuttle. Don't look back." He turned to Vega, his voice quiet now. "You still carrying that flare around?" Vega hesitated. "Yeah, but it's for emergencies." Reyes looked back at the burning trees. "This is one." She handed it over. Reyes loaded it into the underbarrel launcher and took aim, not at the warbird, but at the cliff face above it. The round struck the ridge, and a moment later, the embedded charges, planted by Vega hours earlier, detonated in sequence. The entire cliff face collapsed. Boulders and flame cascaded onto the warbird, slamming it into the earth with a screech of metal and fire. Its pilot tried to eject, but Vega's bullet found the release mechanism before he could escape. Silence fell. The civilians made it to the shuttle. Yin herded them up the ramp while Reyes and Vega covered the rear. When the engines flared, Reyes allowed himself a brief moment of stillness. Then the base exploded behind them. The shockwave rippled through the trees, flattening vegetation, sending a column of black smoke into the sky. The jungle burned, but this time it burned on humanity's terms. Inside the shuttle, Reyes sat against the bulkhead, drenched in sweat and blood. The boy lay beside him, eyes open now, fever breaking. "You're not soldiers," the boy said, barely audible. "You're something else." Reyes didn't respond, just stared at the smoke trailing behind them through the open hatch. Yin slid into the seat across from him. "They'll retaliate." "They already are," Reyes said. "Then what's next?" Reyes looked down at his rifle, then back at the boy. "We sent a message." And far above them, orbiting in low geosync, Draskari Command received its final transmission from the now obliterated outpost. No demands, no threats, just a single data packet. A video. A human, masked in tactical gear, standing before the cage that once held 6 civilians. His voice was clear, unfiltered. "We warned you. You started this war thinking we'd beg for mercy. You took our people. You paraded our children like trophies. But now we are awake. We are coming, and we will not stop." The feed ended in static. And in that moment, far from the battlefield, something shifted in the halls of Draskari power. Not fear, not yet, but doubt. Because humans weren't running anymore. They were hunting. The rain came down in curtains, heavy enough to drown the jungle's usual orchestra. Trees sagged under the weight, branches bowing like they too feared what stalked beneath them. Reyes crouched in the undergrowth, his gear soaked, his focus sharp. Up ahead, lights flickered through the mist, too steady to be fire, too erratic to be power lines. Draskari Tech. Yin moved beside him, silent as vapor. She leaned close. Perimeter grid is active. Motion sensors wideband. But there's a weak point near the waterline. Reyes nodded. Vega. Already planning charges on the northern ridge. We breach. We move fast. We finish this. The compound was newer than the last one. Reinforced plating. Automated towers. And somewhere inside, Commander Sarvak, the Draskari architect of the civilian abductions, the one who ordered the broadcast of the cages. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was retribution. They moved in pairs, slipping through the brush, avoiding the beams of scanning drones. Twice they froze as squads of Draskari soldiers marched past. Better armored now, better armed. The enemy was learning. But so were they. At the breach point, Vega gave a sharp click through comms. The charges detonated in a precise, concussive blast. A hole the size of a drop shuttle ripped through the wall, sending alarms into a frenzy. Reyes led the charge, firing short bursts into stunned guards who barely had time to raise their weapons. The Valkyrie team swept through the base like a storm. Hallways cleared in seconds. Armories were spiked, their weapons turned into twisted heaps of slag. Every room they passed was marked with a quick, brutal efficiency. Reyes didn't speak unless necessary. His focus was absolute. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a reckoning. Sarvak's command center sat buried at the core of the facility, beneath 3 layers of armored blast doors and flanked by auto turrets that tracked friend and foe alike. Yin hacked the entry node with her pulse blade, sweating under the effort as red lights strobed through the corridor. "Almost through," she muttered, fingers dancing across the console. "Just need—" The doors snapped open. Reyes didn't wait. He moved in low, rolling beneath a stream of plasma fire and putting a round through the emitter. The turret sparked and died. The room beyond was circular, lined with alien glyphs pulsing a sickly green. Sarvak stood at the center, armored in ornate plating, flanked by 2 elite guards twice the size of any Reyes had fought before. Sarvak sneered. "So the apex beasts arrive. And yet, still you crawl through the dirt." Reyes raised his rifle. "I'm standing now." The guard charged. Yin dove right, rolling to cover and opening fire. One guard fell mid-sprint, his helm shattering from the impact. Vega engaged the other with blade and sidearm, dodging sweeping blows that could have split steel. Reyes advanced on Sarvak. The Draskari commander drew a sword crackling with energy, its edge humming with destructive charge. They met with a clash of steel and bone, Reyes deflecting the first blow with his rifle's frame before countering with a slash of his own. Sarvak fought like a creature born to war. Fast, precise. But Reyes didn't match him in power. He matched him in intent. Every move was calculated. Every strike was designed not to win, but to wear down, to expose. You think this changes anything? Sarvak growled. You're still prey. Just louder. Reyes ducked under the blade, drove the combat knife into the joint beneath Sarvak's shoulder plate. We were prey, he said, twisting the blade. Now we're something worse. Sarvak roared, slashing wildly. Reyes took a hit across the chest, armor cracking. He staggered back, blood running, but didn't fall. Vega finished the last guard and joined him. Together, they advanced. Sarvak fought with desperation now. Pride cracking. Rage clouding tactics. Yin fired from the flank, a single well-placed shot slamming into his leg joint. The commander dropped to one knee. Reyes stood over him. Sarvak spat blood. End it then. Reyes looked down at him. Not yet. He turned to Yin. Broadcast. She nodded, patching into the base's relay tower. The feed spread like a virus, hijacking every Draskari comm, every fleet frequency. Across the stars, Draskari soldiers, governors, and warlords alike saw the same image. Sarvak, bleeding, defeated, surrounded by humans. Reyes stepped into frame. You made a mistake, he said. You thought we were weak. You thought fear would break us. You don't understand humanity at all. He paused, let the silence stretch. You kidnapped our families. You tortured our children. You try to make us kneel. Now you get to watch what happens when we stand. He drew his sidearm and turned to Sarvak. The commander didn't beg, didn't flinch. He died staring into the face of the species he'd tried to crush. The feed cut. Yin wiped blood from her temple. They'll retaliate harder now. We didn't scare them. We challenged them. Vega reloaded, breathing heavily. Good. Let them come. Reyes looked at the fallen commander, then toward the open door beyond. We'll be waiting. They moved out, leaving behind a base in flames, its command shattered. They didn't speak on the way to extraction. There was no victory song, no celebration, just the knowledge that they'd carved a warning into the bones of their enemy. As the drop shuttle rose through the smoke, Reyes looked out over the jungle. Somewhere beneath the canopy, other humans were still hiding, still resisting, still fighting. And now they'd know they weren't alone. In the silence of orbit, aboard the Valkyrie's cruiser, the team stood before the holographic display of the Draskari front lines. Dozens of outposts, fortified positions, starships gathering. Reyes studied the map. We're not winning yet, Yin said quietly. But we've made them bleed. Vega stepped forward. What's the next target? Reyes didn't answer immediately. He turned toward the viewport, watching the stars drift. We don't pick targets anymore, he said. We become the target. We haunt them, make them question every shadow, every transmission, every footstep in the dark. He looked back, eyes sharp. This isn't just resistance. It's a reckoning. And across the stars, in silent war rooms and command bridges, the Draskari began to understand something too late. They hadn't just provoked humanity. They had awakened it.